Hello, this video is going to serve as a sort of making of video in order to help anybody curious on how we pulled off some of the features in our Byte-off VI entry Runaround. The first thing I should mention is the artwork. Alan, known as Dummy Duck in the community, works on a very analog style. He sketches out his art, then digitizes it. He also works with a lot of different mediums like 3D modeling. He even went as far as creating the title screen with clay, then he scanned it in and rendered it in-game. He's also very aware of the mediums he's working in. His use of dithering in his art really shows up great on a CRT, and that gives you the best results, but it also still looks good on a sharper LCD display. Alan created a short proof of concept for the game early on. He animated his Dummy Duck character and used a palette swap timer from the NESmaker forum in order to make the ground appear to move underneath. This palette swap timer literally became the foundation for the entire game. By modifying the palette change timer with a variable, we're able to change up the speed of the ground movement to go faster and slower. This player speed variable was also at the same time used to apply to the draw sprite script. By triggering the next frame of an animation using the same variable, the player's walking animation now matches the speed of the road movement, instead of going at a steady pattern. To make curves on the road, there were three options we could go with. Most NES games split the camera every couple of scan lines in order to shift the road around back and forth. Unfortunately, with Mapper 30, we do not have that option. One way we could have done it is using tile changes to swap out tiles, making the road move back and forth. The issue there is that it would use a lot more tiles for the road, and if we need to change too many tiles at once, there'd be some frame drops. I ended up using the script from the forum that a lot of people are familiar with, the tile animation script. But instead of rotating between each 4 frames of the tile animation, we used it to create 4 different images of the road. There's a left curving road, a straight road, a slight right curve, and a hard right curve. Doing it this way allows us to instantly swap out all the tile images in one go, moving the road back and forth. We set up these curves in a table to create our tracks. We go back to that foundational timer script again, we count each palette swap as a step that the player takes. After 45 steps, we move on to the next section of the track and the next curve. By putting everything in a table, it also allowed me to create a script that draws the track on the screen. That was a full day of coding just to get that working. To better sell the idea of the player turning on curves, we also implemented a somewhat unique method of scrolling the sky back and forth. If we were to use the sprite zero method of splitting the screen between 2 different camera settings, it would have had the advantage of having a steady line dividing the top and bottom, but you can only split it once and there's a huge cost of performance that we just couldn't tolerate. So instead, we're using a rarely used technique that harnesses the DPCM sound channel as a timer in order to split the screen. There is a great video by M8SI-Bit that explains how to do this, and I will provide a link that shows you that video. Now, using this method has its drawbacks. We can no longer use the DPCM channel for music, and the camera splits can be a little jittery if you don't go out of your way to hide them properly. But the advantage is that there is very little performance impact doing it this way, and we can do multiple screen splits on each frame. So I divided the screen into 3 sections. You got the upper sky, the lower sky, and the ground. Going back to that player speed variable, I applied a camera scroll to each sky section, and suddenly we have something that's similar to a parallax effect for you. Incidentally, I did reuse some of that same code to push the player back and forth on the screen during these turns, and it makes it really feel the curves as well. To draw things coming in from over the horizon, we also used a special layering technique of drawing tiles over top of the objects, but behind the background layer. This is a masking technique that in a way confuses the NES and blocks pixels on an object's sprites, allowing them to crest over the horizon. To show objects moving away from the vanishing point, we use something that is already built into NESmaker, a script called Move Towards Point. Now this bit of code is usually used to make a monster move towards a player or shoot an object at the player. This works by feeding it 2 sets of coordinates, the monster's X and Y coordinates and the player's X and Y coordinates. But if we substitute the player's X and Y coords for a fixed vanishing point, suddenly we have an object moving towards a horizon. And in order to move away from that horizon, we simply swap around the X and Y coordinates. By mixing them up, the object is now sent away from the vanishing point. The other big thing about perspective is things get smaller as they get further away. Now, a lot of games on the NES simply just draw increasingly smaller versions of the object in order to show them shrinking as they get further away. But that would fill up a lot of space that we need, and we want to use a lot of different objects, so there's just not enough room for that. So we came up with a new trick. In NESmaker, every object is made using a grid of sprites. Sprites are 8 pixels by 8 pixels, and the grid places them exactly 8 pixels apart to create a seamless object. Instead of redrawing all these sprites every time we want to get something smaller, we're just going to reduce the space between the sprites more and more the further they get. This works great for most things, but if they get too far away, the overlapping gets too much and they just become a distorted mess. So we combine both methods. We shrink the grid as much as we can, then we switch to a second smaller object, and then start shrinking that one down. Now we have a very smooth shrinking all the way up to the right. In order to keep everything looking as clean as possible on the game screen, and prevent us from exceeding that very strict 64 sprite limitation that the Nintendo has, we decided on a special way to render the HUD. In order to get all of this working, I had to write a special screen loading script that loads up both the left and right name tables in an 8x8 tile mode. So now we have two different screens loaded up at any given time. To switch to the other screen, we simply change the camera value for the bottom of those 3 screen split sections to the other table, and suddenly you can see the HUD over there on the other screen. And now you can just switch back and forth between those 2 bottom sections of the screens, and it works very seamlessly. For music and sound effects, we enlisted the help of Pine Oak. He was offering his help on the community Facebook page for Byte-off, and we were lucky to snatch him up before anybody else. He was already experienced with FamiTracker, and he learned the limitations and quirks of GG Sound and NESmaker right away. GG Sound is the sound engine that NESmaker uses by default. I highly recommend people look into using the Saber sound engine in the future for any of their projects. It's a great engine, it's a lot more efficient, there's a lot of features that GG Sound doesn't have, and it's created by Cuttercross. Pine Oak wasn't too happy about some of these limitations of GG Sound, one of them being the inability to loop parts of the song. He wanted to be able to write a beginning section and then loop the body of the song for as long as the level needs you to. This is a feature that is possible with FamiTracker and with GG Sound, but when you import the music through the NESmaker UI, it does not support that particular ability. So Pine Oak consulted with the experts. Cuttercross was extremely generous with his time and guidance, and Kevin81 shared a tool that's super effective for scanning FamiTracker tracks. It checks for errors and incompatibilities and lets you know what you need to do to fix things. It's a great tool, and we're going to send a link to that as well. What Pine Oak learned is that by compiling the music outside of NESmaker's interface, we could bypass that limitation on the looping, and now we can do our mid-song loops as much as we want. One particular track that I wanted to draw people's attention to is the Bay Breeze. That's the music in the level selection screen. Pine Oak put into practice some of the sonic narrativity concepts from Dr. Fernando Emboaba de Camargo's 2008 doctorate thesis. Pine Oak merged environmental soundscapes like seagulls, tides, and car horns directly into the music, kept the player immersed. The goal was to break away from the dullness that usually comes with hearing the same game loop over and over. It's a pretty nice thing to sit and listen to. So to summarize, to make this game, not only it took a team effort, but a lot of community support. An inhuman amount of caffeine also to get it done in time. If you enjoyed our submission this year, we think it was worth it. Hopefully the video might inspire you to come up with your own ideas and try some new things. Thank you for watching.